Bishop Lamor Whitehead, who was robbed earlier this year during his sermon, is now behind bars himself. Why? Well, it turns out he's a massive scammer, something that we had suspected, but now it's actually alleged by authorities in his state. Now, Lamor Whitehead, who's 45 years old, was arrested and charged Monday of this week with several crimes, including wire fraud, extortion, and making false statements. And that's according to the US Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. If convicted, he faces a lot of time in prison, upwards of 65 years. And by the way, he has dabbled with identity theft and other issues pertaining to fraud before, which I actually wasn't privy to. And I'll get into those details in just a moment, including the details of what he did recently in just a moment. Cenk, I wanna get your thoughts first.
Yeah, he didn't dabble, he got convicted. So he definitely did it before. And he just learned a better scam while in prison. And the better scam is religion. And so should he go away, as you'll see in the details here? Yeah, I think he should. And he scammed people out of money. On the other hand, I mean, name me a prosperity preacher, I should say, in this country, whether they're right wing, left wing, black or white, that isn't a scam artist, that does the same exact thing, but in a different level. They do it on an industrial level. Hey, I'm not gonna take $90,000 from one person. I'm gonna take 90 bucks from 1,000 people, 100,000 people. I'm gonna use it for the same thing that this guy does, for expensive suits and cars and jets, etc.
It's a little different though, and I guess Whitehead wasn't aware of how the scam is supposed to work, right? So if you are reaching out to parishioners and telling them to give you money that you can invest on their behalf to help them make more money, and it turns out, no, you just pocketed the money or you went and bought yourself luxury items, that's not okay. But if you take their money and say that you're using it to talk to God, that is okay.
Yes, that's literally the law.
Yeah.
Okay, if you give them insane nonsense promises about how God is going to give them more money later, if you just give all your money to them, American politicians are like, bravo, way to rip off everybody there. I mean, I'm sure God will listen to you, obvious charlatan, right?
It's religious liberty, James.
Yeah, well, and they do. They use that as a guide. That's why a lot of con men go to religion, because there's a lot of protection for con men if they're inside a so-called religion.
And it's all tax exempt, baby.
Yeah, so in this case, look, he's a little bit of an easier target because he's kind of a flamboyant African-American guy drawing a lot of attention to himself. His scams are actually kind of low level, if you ask me. So
there's a lot of money involved.
I hear you. So I shed no tear for him, and I hope they put him away. And it's going to affect the mayor of New York. We'll talk about that in a second. But I just want them to be as aggressive against all religious scam artists.
Now let's talk a little bit about what he did specifically. What does the indictment say? Well, according to the indictment, it states that between April of 2020 and July of 2021, Whitehead elicited about $90,000 from a woman who attended his church, telling her that he would use the money to help her get home and then invest any remaining money in his real estate business. But shortly after the parishioner transferred the funds out of her retirement savings, he used it to buy thousands of dollars in luxury goods. And again, that's according to the indictment. Now, that wasn't the only scheme he was involved in. In yet another scheme, he allegedly extorted a businessman out of thousands of dollars and promised to obtain favorable actions by the New York City government, which the reason why he cited that is because it turns out that he was actually good friends with Eric Adams, now the mayor of New York City, okay? Now there's no evidence, as far as we know, indicating that Eric Adams did favors for him. Again, as far as we know at this moment, who knows what could develop in the future, but here's what we know so far. In April of 2022, Whitehead attempted to convince a local businessman to lend him around $500,000 and give him a stake in certain real estate transactions in exchange for Whitehead obtaining favorable actions by the New York City government that would enrich them both.
I hope the businessman's arrested too. I mean, it's not like he's innocent.
I mean, businessmen buy political favors in this country all the time, and it's legal. So
yeah, you can just, hey, by the way, idiot businessman, just give campaign contributions. Politicians will come and mow your lawn. What do you need to go through this huckster for?
Whitehead knew that he had no ability to obtain such actions, the indictment states, adding that the bishop told the businessman they would make millions. Prosecutors allege Whitehead also used threats of force to obtain $5,000 from a business owned by the same man. So there was the $500,000 and then an additional $5,000 involved with this one businessman.
Yeah, so back in 2013, he was convicted of 17 counts of identity theft and went to prison. He said that he found God in prison. No, he just found a better scam in prison. And he thought, identity theft, that's kind of a low-level scam. If you pretend to be religious, people just give you their money because they'll trust you. So this is what I'm pleading with you guys in the audience. Look, are there good religious leaders in the country? Of course, and there's some of them are in our audience, and they're wonderful people. But if you see a religious leader saying, God, if you give me money, all these great things are gonna happen. God's gonna love you if you give me money, or your business is gonna do better, or you're gonna make more money later, etc. Don't believe them. Come on, guys, don't believe them. Like and the sickest part of these con men is that they think religious people are the easiest mark because they act on faith alone. Oh, so please, religious folks, I'm not at all religious, but I'm trying to look out for you. How can you not tell that this guy's running an obvious con? Everything about him is like he drives a Rolls Royce and says dumbass things, which all these prosperity preachers do, of God wants me to drive a Rolls Royce. The minute you hear that run from the building, it's so obvious, which leads me to Eric Adams, the mayor of New York. The guy's still friends with him, and he said, well, look, I don't want to interfere in the investigation. We had a good relationship, blah, blah, blah. Eric Adams, you couldn't tell that this guy is a total fraud?
Maybe not.
Come on, driving in his Rolls Royce, pretending to be religious, dressed up in those ridiculous outfits, telling people all the time how they got to give him money. You couldn't tell? No, you could tell. And apparently, I mean, either you're an idiot that you couldn't tell, or you enjoyed the corruption that he was taking part in.